Hi everyone, it's Alice, and today we're just gonna do a super chill, cozy reading afternoon slash evening, I guess. So even though it's the weekend, I got up quite early today because I needed to film a video, which I have, and my plans for the rest of the day is to just have a very relaxed day and evening. I just feel like I need it. I need some quiet and some peace and just to do my favorite things, so that's what we're gonna do. I'm really into the book that I'm currently reading right now, which I'll show you later, but it's a book I have really been anticipating and it was very recently released, so I'm excited to continue that. I'm like maybe a fourth of the way through. It's quite a chunky book, so I don't know how far into it I'll get today, but I'll try to do quite a lot of reading in that. And then I don't have a lot of plans outside of that. I want to maybe do some baking. I feel like that's a nice part of a quiet evening is to eat some sort of like cake or something. I think I might make some muffins or cupcakes. I never know what the difference is. I guess they're muffins. I don't really know. But I'm gonna make some of those and then I'm going to read. I might also watch an episode of something just to get a little bit of a break from reading. I'm not really the kind of reader that can just sit down for hours and hours and hours and read, even when I'm loving the book that I'm reading. So I usually take some small breaks, and I might do that today as well. And then I think that's gonna be it. I'm gonna start baking now, but I thought while I'm baking, I might put on an audiobook. Now, if you've been on this channel a lot, you might know that I don't really listen to audiobooks. I have explained before that I just, for some reason, I usually can't concentrate on them. And I actually try listening to audiobooks quite often. Like, I'll hear of an audiobook that's really good and I'll try listening to it and I can never listen all the way through. For some reason, I can't concentrate on them. But I listened to an audiobook recently that I actually managed to listen all the way through and I really enjoyed it. The book was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, and I listened to it on audio because I actually couldn't find the physical copy. It's sold out everywhere here and I didn't really want to like wait for it, like order it online and wait for like 3 weeks before it arrived. So I found the audiobook and I was like, I'll try it out. It's the first audiobook that I've listened to for years all the way through, so I'm really excited that I found that. And now I'm thinking, since I like that, maybe I can find a way into listening to audiobooks more than just like once every 10 years. So I want to try some other audiobooks. I just really struggle to find the right ones for me, for whatever reason. Because the book I listened to was a memoir and it was read by the author, I'm thinking maybe this is my way in, and I'll try some more like personal memoirs that are read by the author. And I've found a couple that I want to try out, and I've like Googled best memoir audiobooks recently and I just found a couple and I'm gonna try them and see what I think. I don't know how it's gonna go, but I'm gonna try. And because I know a lot of you listen to audiobooks, if you have any recommendations, let me know. Maybe just like your favorite or whatever. I want it to be nonfiction and preferably a memoir. I'm not ready to listen to like fiction on audiobook. I don't know if that's ever gonna work for me, but I'm not there. So if anyone has any like nonfiction memoir audiobook recommendations, I would love to know. Especially if you've listened to I'm Glad My Mom Died and you liked it, and you can think of books that are like that, maybe in tone and in the way it's written and read. I don't really know what I'm looking for. This is the issue, but for some reason that book worked for me. So if anyone knows of any books like that are like that to listen to, I'd love to know. I'm gonna try to listen to one of the ones that I found while I'm baking though. It's actually Jessica Simpson's memoir. I can't remember the name of the book, but I've heard a lot of really good things about it, and I do know who Jessica Simpson is. She was like a huge star when I was in my teens, and I can't remember, like, I don't know what happened to her or anything like that, but I've heard that the book is really, really good. So I'm gonna give that a go. I have actually listened to the first chapter, or it was maybe like the introduction. It felt like an introduction, and I'm not completely sold on it, but I'm gonna keep listening and see how I feel. Those ended up really good, even though I found a recipe and I thought that I had all the ingredients and then I didn't, and so I had to like DIY it a little bit, but they turned out really good. I really like making, it's like a lemon poppy seed type muffin, I guess, and I really like making muffins with poppy seeds because it's like a little bit crunchy, so that really hit the spot. It did, like, I've had like 3 now and I think I'm hungry, like a lot hungrier than just for cake, so I'm gonna leave them for a little bit. I think I'm gonna order some takeaway in a little while, and then I'll have like more for dessert. I don't really know why I'm telling you that, but nevertheless, they turned out really good. I did try to listen to the audiobook that I mentioned while I was baking, and for some reason, like, I listened to the first chapter yesterday and it was fine, but then I started listening to the second chapter and right now it's not working for me, so I just left it alone. But let me tell you about a book that is working for me, which is this one. I've taken the dust jacket off of this, but this is Maja Lunde's new book. Maja Lunde is a Norwegian author. She is most famous for her book, The History of Bees, which is actually a part of the Climate Quartet series, and this is the final book in that series. If you haven't heard of these books, basically it's kind of hard to explain, but they're in a series, but they're also kind of not, but also they are, which makes no sense. But each of the books in the series deal with a different climate crisis type thing. So the first book is The History of Bees. It deals with bees. The second book is The End of the Ocean, which deals with water. The third book is The Last Wild Horses, which deals with animals. And then this book, it's called Drømmen om et tre in Norwegian. I don't know what the English title is, actually. I don't know if it's been translated yet, but I think it has been. I don't know. But this is the last book, and it deals with disease. Now, I've talked about the books in this series quite a lot, and I've especially recommended The History of Bees, which is the first one, but all of the books in the series are really good. And the thing is, I've explained that you can read the series out of order. Like, the books feel like standalone books, but if you do read them in the right order, there are certain things that you'll be able to pick up on. These books are dystopian, but they're also like historical fiction, some of them. They have several timelines, at least the other 3 books did. And so, like in the first book, you have a historical perspective, a perspective close to current day, and then a future perspective, which is the dystopian one. And it's clear that things are moving towards not a great place. All of the books are very character driven, and although there are things that like tie the 3 other books together, and there are things that you'll be able to pick up on if you've read all of them, it's not like essential to the story. Like, there are characters that appear in several books, and if you don't know that that's the same character, it doesn't really matter. But in this one, I feel like it kind of does. This is a little bit different than the other books, and I started reading this and I was like, okay, this is the book, like this is a book that's gonna like tie all the other books together, and I wasn't really expecting that. I don't know what I was expecting, but I thought that this would be, I just thought that the books would only be very loosely related, but this is like, there are a lot of threads in the other books that this is sort of tying together, and it's interesting, and I feel like it's quite clever. And if you read this as a standalone, I don't know if you would really get it. You would get the story, but I just feel like you would miss out on a lot of extra stuff. And I guess technically it's not essential to the story, but it's very clever, so it's fun to get it. And it's been a while since I read the other books. Like, The History of Bees came out years and years ago, and I've only read it once. And I can like see things and remember things from all of the other books that is like coming up in this. And there are characters that you've met in the other books that you will also meet in here. I feel very invested in the story because of all of this. Like, when I started reading it, I was like immediately into it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's that character from that book. And it's interesting because in the other books, I've always really enjoyed the dystopian perspective, so the future perspective, and I always felt like we didn't get to know as much as I wanted to. These books are very character driven, and so we follow these people, and because the world has gone in a certain direction, they don't know everything, and so we don't get to know everything. But this one only has the future perspective, so at least so far, it only has the dystopian perspective, and so I feel like we're learning a lot. It's set a little bit further on than any of the other future perspectives in the other books, if I remember correctly. It's set at like around, I don't know how you would say it, 2110? So it's like 90 years into the future. 90? Yeah. And it's, I don't know, it's just like hitting me. A thing I really like about Lunde's books is that she is Norwegian, and in each of her books she has had a perspective set in Norway. And this one is also set in Norway. It's set in a particular part of Norway, which is not mainland Norway. It's set in Svalbard. I don't know how you say that in English. Spitsbergen? I don't know. It's called different things, but it's set on this like island, or it's a group of islands close to like the North Pole. It's like south of the North Pole. And it's a very, very particular place. I've never been there, but because I am Norwegian, I know of it, and I've seen a lot of pictures of it. I know what it's, I've at least read what it's like there. Like, I've met people who have lived there, and it's a very interesting setting, and it's just a very particular place. Svalbard is like notoriously rough. It's very, like, the climate and everything about that place is just, it's a very rough place to live in a lot of ways. Now we live in the modern world, and so there are things like convenient things there and stuff like that, and a lot of people who live there love it there. Not a lot of people live there, actually. It has a lot of tourism, but there aren't a lot of people who actually live there. Maybe I should Google how many actually. So Google says that there are 2,642 people living there, but that was a number from 2012, so it's a while ago. But not a lot of people live there, and it's also like it's a part of Norway, but it's also kind of separate in that you have to be a very particular kind of person to live there, and there are also laws about what you can and cannot do there. Like, you're not really allowed to die there. Like, if you get old, you have to move back to the mainland, because it's not the kind of place that can take care of old people. You're also technically not allowed to give birth there, because I think they have a hospital, but it's not as well equipped as like mainland hospitals, which is also the reason why you're not supposed to grow old there or really get sick, like really sick there. You literally just have to move if you're not like super tough and strong and young and not pregnant. These things sound quite rough, but it's literally that way just because it's one of those places that not everyone can live. It's not for everyone. And so it's very interesting that the characters that we meet in the future in this book are in this place, which is really like a rough place to live. There are references to the mainland in this book, and there are references to the fact that the mainland is like not a place that you want to be anymore, which I think is interesting. It's like lawless and chaotic. And so the citizens of this island in this book, 40 years before we meet the characters that we meet in here, they decided to cut off like communication with the rest of the world, which is also just like, and there are not a lot of people on this island. Like, I think it's so hard to talk about this without giving stuff away, but there are references to the fact that there are like 500-600 people there, but then there are also references to the fact that all of those people are not there anymore. And like I mentioned, this book is, like, the main theme of it is disease. And the part that I've gotten to now is like I'm reading about the disease making its way to this place, and it's starting to wreak havoc. And I think that there are not going to be a lot of people left after that disease, but I don't know. There are like references to it, but I don't quite know yet. It feels extremely desolate. And when I started reading this book, it was almost like overwhelming how desolate and lonely it felt, because when we meet this character, he makes references to the past, but where he's at, it seems like there are like 5 people left in this place or something like that. I don't know, but like, can you imagine, like, in the future, a dystopian future, there are 5 people on an island where it's really rough to live, and it's like there's nothing you can do because there are no people left. Another thing about this setting, which I love, is the fact that, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but on this island there is something called, and this exists, there's something called the Global Seed Vault, which is a vault that is like down in the ground, down in the permafrost up there, where seeds from all over the world are kept as like backup seeds in case of global emergencies, which feels, even now when it's like a real thing, that feels very dystopian. Like, there's something apocalyptic about it, and that's like at least it's something that I know about, and it's like a huge thing, and it's up there. And there are, like, that seed vault is a pretty big part of the story. We don't just read the story from the perspective of the people who live on this island. I don't want to give too much away, but there are other people as well. And the seed vault is like a hope for the future, because things have really, like we've seen in the other books, things have really gone to shiz. And there's like hope in the seed vault. And there are people who go down there in the book as well. There are like seed keepers who are in charge of the seed vault, and there are discussions about what it could do for people and if people should be allowed to access it. There aren't really a lot of people left, but like there's a lot of talk of the seed vault, and I thought that it was really interesting that this is in the book, because this is a thing that I have felt is really dystopian for such a long time. There's something wonderful about it, but there's also something scary about it. And I can just like imagine in the future, if people were to forget about the seed vault, which can happen, if someone like found it again, like future humans, like far in the future. For some reason, I'm the kind of person who thinks about stuff like that, and there is something really just very dystopian about it, and I love the fact that it's in this book. Anyways, I'm just talking and talking and talking. I actually, like, the more I talk about it, the more I just want to sit down and read this a little bit. So I'm gonna keep reading. We can keep talking about it later. And I'm gonna order myself some food, eat a little bit, maybe watch a little bit of something. And then I'm just gonna read. I'm so curious as to what's gonna happen in the rest of this book. And it's been a while since I've felt this way. And so it's very, very exciting. I'm on page 149 now, and it's like 500 pages-ish, and I wonder how much I'm gonna have time to read today. Hopefully, a lot. I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting quite sleepy, and I think I'm done reading for today. I have read quite a lot in this now, and it's still so good. I feel like I can't really tell you that much about what's happened, but it's still really desolate, and it has kind of like a hopeless feeling about it, which is sad but also fits the book very well. I really like the writing style. I really like the characters and how they're described. I feel like this author is really good at describing the feelings of the characters, and I think especially in this book, when things are just so difficult, she captures everything that's happening really well. I think one of the reasons I like this book so much and that it hits me in the way that it does, and I think the reason it works, at least so far, is that a lot of the things that are described are like everyday. I don't really know how to explain this, but it's dystopian, and it's a different kind of everyday, but the people are still the same, and there are the same feelings and needs and wants, but it's hard to do anything in this kind of world, and it's always sad to see people not get what they need and what they deserve. And I think one of the reasons that in some ways these books are really scary is that because the everyday is explored so much. You can kind of like see similarities to today's everyday, and if you pay attention to the world and things that are happening in it, there is something in this that feels scarily realistic, and that makes it horrifying but also really, really good. I don't know how well I'm explaining it, but it is very, very good. It's just sad and a little heavy, and I'm very curious as to what's gonna happen. We have, I can say, read a little bit more about a disease, and there are moments in that that also, I think, resonate with people more now that we've been through a pandemic, and I guess it's kind of over, but it's not really over. And there are like moments that I feel like everyone who's lived through that can recognize, and because we're sort of flipping back and forth and we sort of know where things are going, it makes it even sadder in a way. And it's interesting to see that the humans in the book, like, they never really learn, ever. I really like it though. I'm a little sad that this is the final book, but I'm also intrigued to see where it's gonna go. I'm very curious as to what's gonna happen to the characters, and we are following more characters, but we're mainly right now following like some people who are on Svalbard, but there are like other characters as well, and we haven't really heard that much from them, but they are there, and I'm assuming we're gonna learn more about them as well, and whatever society that is. It's very hard to talk about without like spoiling all of it, but I'm very intrigued. It is a little bit of a heavy book to read though, I will say. I think it's like the part that I've read now, where there's been like disease, but also just like stuff with family, and all of it is just very heavy. I do need to take some breaks. I have read quite a lot in this today, so I feel like I'm gonna continue on with it tomorrow, and now I need a little bit more of a mindless break. Now, while I was eating dinner, I watched part of an episode of Sherlock, which is one of my favorite series. I've watched it several times. For some reason, I'm one of those people who can like rewatch mystery series without any problems. Like, if it's really good, I don't care if I know what's gonna happen. I still like rewatching it. So I'm gonna watch the rest of that episode, I think. And it's been a while since I've rewatched it, so I have forgotten quite a lot of it. So it's still very fun to watch, and it's also just such a good series. I wish that they had made more. They made like 4 seasons, and each episode is like an hour and a half, so it's basically a movie, but I just wish they made so many more. I think that's gonna be the rest of my evening though. I'm actually quite sleepy already, and the sun is setting, so I'm gonna go to bed in not too long. Maybe I'll read a little bit more before bed. This isn't really the kind of book that like it's not conducive to like a good night's sleep necessarily, so maybe I shouldn't read this before bed. I am currently reading like 3 other books as well, so I might continue on with one of those. But this is also like the kind of book that I want to keep going with, so the struggle is real. But I am gonna call it a day for this vlog, at least. I'd love to know if any of you have read this book though. It's only been out for like 2 weeks or something, and I still don't know if it's out in English yet, but if any of you have read this book or any of the other books in the series, I would love to know. Or you can just tell me what you're currently reading, because I'm always interested in that. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with me as always, and I will see you soon. Bye!